So I want to think a little bit about Heraclitus and Derrida. I just did a pre-Socrates video, like a little pre-Socrates video, just about Heraclitus himself. We talked about oneness and opposition and logos and fire and all those different things. We talked about how Heraclitus has this dynamic in his philosophy of how on one hand there's opposition, conflict, and chaos in the world, and how things have to conflict and oppose in order to be, in order to come into being, and how on the other hand there is a logos, there's a pattern of things, there's a oneness. I was kind of talking about how there's sort of a conflicting, sort of contradictory aspect of his philosophy, and it kind of made me think of how his thought is beyond his time. And Heraclitus was one of the first thinkers, and I think Plato changed everything by making everything systematized, and he had a philosophy of everything based upon his forms, and everything was sort of systematized into one logocentric thing. And how Derrida has basically deconstructed every kind of philosophy before him that was either a logocentric or a metaphysics presence. And if you have a lot of videos on Derrida, which I have discussed a lot about what logocentrism is and what metaphysics about what metaphysics of presence is. So if you want to get a better idea from me about what those things are, you can go back to those videos. But deconstruction for Derrida is to deconstruct something that is a philosophy of presence or has a concept of logos in it. So I guess Derrida would still deconstruct Heraclitus' thought, because there is a concept of logos in Heraclitus' thought, but there is something very similar with Heraclitus and Derrida in this concept of chaos or opposition or conflict. How things have to marginalize, go back and forth. They have to deconstruct and yet reconstruct, or in the terms of Deleuze and Guattari, they have to deterritorialize and reterritorialize and back and forth. I think basically marginalizing for Derrida is that things have this sort of play of back and forth, this play of concepts where there's no really fixedness, there's no fixatedness, if that's a word. There's no real fixity of concepts in Derrida's thought. However, in Heraclitus there is, in what we can understand of him. But I just kind of wanted to highlight this little similarity between Heraclitus and Derrida, as to how I think Heraclitus was way before his time, and how when Plato came along, Plato engendered this new breed of philosophy, which is absolute, logocentric, systematized, and all about a philosophy of presence. So with Plato came Aristotle, Descartes, Leibniz, Locke, Hume, Hegel, Fichte, Schopenhauer, Husserl, Heidegger, and all these people that have a philosophy of presence in some way or another. And it wasn't until post-structuralism and deconstruction that things went the other way. Things went away from a philosophy of presence and to a philosophy of dispersion, if you know what I'm saying. So I guess I wanted to highlight that a little bit, and I think that's really, really neat, really, really cool how that has worked. But I just think that Heraclitus was way before his time in that way, and that when Plato came along, things just changed, and nothing was really about chaos or conflict or opposition pertaining to being anymore. I mean, everything was about presence and about absoluteness and logos. And Heraclitus had both. He had chaos and conflict, and also logos. Everything was chaotic and conflicting and opposing, and yet also typical, and having a pattern and logocentric. So he had both those things, which really is conflicting in itself. Um, but Heraclitus said that you can't step twice into the same river, in that um, everything is changing. Everything there's also this opposition in his philosophy means that everything in this world is always changing. But I just think it's really cool, and I kind of almost want to write something about that, like write a paper or something about that, because to kind of make a statement about how Heraclitus and Derrida have this, and even Foucault also. Foucault kind of has this thing in his philosophy in his philosophy about how things have a similarity. What's the word he uses? It's resemblance. That's the word he uses, about how everything in this world has some resemblance in one way or another. He talks about different kinds of resemblance via emulation or other things, and how basically everything is related in some way or another, and how everything can kind of collapse in this way because everything is yet different. So Foucault and Derrida, and also Deleuze, they all do it in different ways, but it's the same kind of thing because it's all a philosophy of dispersion. It's not. It's no longer a philosophy of presence. It's a philosophy of dispersion. So I also want to kind of touch on what a philosophy of dispersion is more on this channel a little more, and not I know I talk about Foucault and Derrida and Deleuze a lot, but I want to talk about how they all are a philosophy of dispersion, more. So let me know what your thoughts are, and if you want me to discuss anything on this channel, anything at all, tell me, and I will try to oblige you in that way. So thank you.